Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Luminary Panel, the entrepreneurial podcast where we fuel minds with insights and inspirations. My name is Liliana Fidoa, and today I'm thrilled to introduce Justin Sandler, Orlando's #1 rated executive coach and an expert in optimizing personal performance. Justin owns his own coaching business and brings extensive sales experience, having also worked as a realtor. He's helped countless professionals and entrepreneurs unlock their full potential and achieve successes. In this episode, Justin shares his journey from his sales career to becoming one of the most sought-after executive coaches in Orlando. He's known for his unique approach to enhancing personal and professional performance, and today, he'll be diving into strategies for optimizing success in both business and in your personal life.
We're back with another episode of the Luminary Panel. I have a very special guest. One of our Season 1 guest, Robert Bagley, got in contact with this gentleman to my left, and he was like, Johnston, you have to get him on your podcast. And I was like, I trust Robert, so I'm sure of it that he's going to bring some impact and some value to the conversation.
Thank you.
So, with further ado, Mr.
Justin Sandler.
Yes, sir. So, Justin, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and the whole nine, then we'll go into the conversation.
Yeah, sure. So I'll also give a shout out to Robert, who made this introduction connection possible. He actually, I think, commented on a LinkedIn post and connected us, even though I didn't know him.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to meet Robert recently. We had lunch for about an hour and a half about a week or two ago. And
Nice.
He's really, really cool guy, and I really enjoyed that. So shout
out
to
to
him.
Rob.
Yep. Lots of love for Robert today.
Let's go.
But yeah, I'm originally from Chicago. I grew up there my whole life. I've been in Orlando for about 10 years. Background was always in sales. I've sold real estate. I've sold luxury cars. I've sold media space, food and beverage, car rental. And then got into coaching. I do executive coaching, so one-on-one coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've been doing that for about 4.5 years now. So
Nice. So
yeah.
you were telling me in our introduction call,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling me a little bit about like your life as a real estate agent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that was one of the bigger pivots in your life where it transitioned you into becoming a executive coach.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me about the stuff beforehand. Like what was
Before
that?
real estate?
Before real estate.
Before real estate. It was a journey, man. It was definitely a journey. So I've had a lot of health issues.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I can always go more or less detail, but my whole life I was always healthy, and then my life was pretty good. I mean, I'd say I had a pretty privileged life. Like not too much bad stuff happened to me up until like age 18. Mm. And then at age 19, I got really sick. I was dying in the hospital. I was in the ICU dying.
No way.
I was on this medicine that was supposed to help me, but it actually gave me drug-induced hepatitis. It destroyed my liver. It gave me autoimmune disease. I lost 40 pounds and almost died of malnutrition. I couldn't stand up. I was in a wheelchair. I had an NG tube in my nose. I was literally fed through an NG tube in my nose for 9 months because I couldn't eat, because my jaw was so locked up that I couldn't chew food because it was too painful.
Wow.
So there was a lot of different health struggles that I had. And so between the ages of 19 and like 24 or 22 or 23, I forget exactly, I was in and out of the hospital many, many times. I had to drop in and out of school multiple times just because of health reasons. And so finally graduated when I was 26, and my health was really bad. I was so sick that I was back here in Orlando with my family, and I was so messed up I couldn't even like send an email to my professors. And so I somehow miraculously sort of completed the last little bit here, went to take my exams, barely passed, barely graduated. So that was at 26. Mm-hmm. I'm about to be 37. And so over...
No way.
Yeah.
You look
so
good,
thank
man.
you, bro. Thank you. So, so before real estate, I was here and I was in restaurants, and, my health wasn't good, and I was kind of pushed around because, when you're in a vulnerable place, that can happen.
Yeah.
And got into car rental. I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and that, didn't go well at first, and I got really good. And so what happened before real estate was I thought, hey, I'm getting good at this. Why don't I sell a higher ticket item and work for myself? Also, we can get into this other tangent later if we want to, but I always wanted to get really good at dancing salsa. It's like a really big lifelong passion for me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted money and time so I could get really dope at dancing.
Yeah.
And so
You wanna
that was
bust a
maybe a
move?
long-winded answer, but the answer was it was tough. I
Yeah.
wasn't out here just killing it at life. I mean, my 20s were very, very rough health-wise.
Yeah.
But that's sort of how I stumbled towards real estate. And in the beginning, real estate was tough, and then it got better, and I could go into detail of that. But that was a little bit of the summary of
Yeah.
what was going on before.
Yeah, bro. Thank you for sharing, because I didn't
Yeah.
know that at all.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, though,
Mhm.
because that's probably one of the toughest times of your life, where you felt like it was all over. You felt like this is it. But obviously you didn't give up. What was the thing that gave you the strength, the courage, the bravery to keep pushing forward to later on become healthy like you are now, but
Mhm.
also achieving something that is as good as real estate?
Yeah. I think a lot of things. I mean, I guess I want to start by saying I do think that there can be times in life where, I don't know, sometimes you hear these personal development people that are all about like, you know, nobody helped me and blah, blah, blah. And I come from nothing and I pulled myself through all these things. And it's like, yeah, but there are certain things in life that if they're bad enough, like, and they just really cut you off at the feet or the legs or however that phrase goes, then it's like you need help. And that's a fact. That's it's not a matter of, oh, how weak or strong are you? Like, if your mind is destroyed and your body is destroyed,
Yeah.
you're going to need some help. I don't care if you're Tony Robbins, oh, you pull yourself through everything. It's like, no, man. And so for me, I think, I don't want to say that I'm humble because I could be a lot more humble, but life kind of humbled me. And there was a lot of help I had, you know. I mean, thank God my family was helping me, and I had good doctors and good nurses and good healthcare systems and good physical therapy and good, you know, friendships and all of these things that supported me. So I think that the worst off the things you're going through, I would recommend asking for help, because there are times where you really, really do need a lot of support.
What was the internal thing that helped you get there?
I think the internal thing was I always felt like there was something on the other side of where it was.
I love it.
You know
Let's
what I
talk
mean? It
about
was like I could see in my head, and it was sort of vague, and I'll even be kind of a little bit shallow and admit what I saw, but I sort of saw myself with a nice car and like girls around me or whatever. You know, I'm 19 years old. But the point was is that I always saw like, you know what? There's something on the other side of this that is really, really good.
Yeah.
And if I could get there, life would be good.
Yep.
You know, and so I think if you had to really, really oversimplify a lot of life, I think you do have to see something on the other side of where you are in your head that you do believe is possible, that keeps you going. Because if you don't have that, it's too painful, whether it's building the business or whatever it is you're trying to do. If it's something difficult, it's too hard. Like, there's not enough reason to keep going. But if there's a great line we were talking about, you know, we both have faith, not that we're perfect, obviously, but you know that line where Jesus says to Peter, like, hey, are you going to desert me too? And, you know, all these people are deserting him because Jesus says a lot of crazy things to people, you know? And Peter says something like, hey, you know, like, to where else would we go? And so I was literally thinking about that line the other day, like, with the type of work that I'm interested in doing with the executive coaching. It's like, yeah, I could stop. There's been a lot of opportunities where I could have stopped, but I sort of feel like, to where else would I go? Because this is what I see in my head. This is the type of work that I think I'm on this earth to do.
Yeah.
So I think if you see something in your head where you just feel like that's just what you feel you have to continue to move towards, your pain tolerance can be very high. And so the clearer that is, and the more you kind of desire it, the more pain you can tolerate. And so I felt like I could have a good life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always, since we're on the topic of faith, I always say this in our workshops and on my solo podcast episodes. I always say, like, everything happens for you, not to you, and everything works together for the good of those who love Him.
God is calling towards His purpose.
Exactly.
Look, mumbling.
Yeah, but the key word is according to His purpose. A lot of times we go into things that we think will go well for us, as far as like passions and professional work and personal relationship. It doesn't matter. We feel like it's good for us, but we're so connected to the outcome that we want rather than what is supposed to happen. So when it doesn't fulfill what is supposed to happen, or if it doesn't fulfill what we want, we get discouraged between what's supposed to happen.
I think we all know that feeling.
We know
or
that
at least
feeling.
I know that feeling.
For sure.
I mean, I don't know, something that helps me, and again, I'm not saying that I'm like world's greatest at this, but the whole like thy will be done thing is a powerful thing, you know, because it's like if something's in God's hands, you know, and it happens the way you want, then that's cool because that's what you want it to happen.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it's sort of like, well, if it's in God's hands, that means that wouldn't have been good for me. So it's sort of a win-win, even though it's a lot easier to say that than to do it, especially the more important that it is for you. But I think something that helps me too is like the bigger the thing is in your life, the more the thy will be done thing helps, and sort of the easier it is in a way. So let's take the topic of like romance, right? I'm not a dating coach, little disclaimer, right? You don't have to go and do anything I say, like don't come sue me.
Listen, I'm single too.
But hey, what I'm saying is like, you know, let's say there's somebody you're interested in, right? And let's say you really want that to happen, but let's say you put that in God's hands. It's such a big thing, you know? So like the person who you choose as your spouse, your future spouse, is also going to be like the mother of your children and your best friend and kind of your business partner and your life partner, and you guys are going to be facing adversity together. And so it's sort of one of those things where it's like, I have somebody that I'm interested in, but it's like, yes, I would like that to happen, but if that's not God's will, that's such a big thing to get wrong that I can genuinely say from the bottom of my heart, I have peace about it, and I wouldn't want it to happen if it's not God's will. I think business is another good example, or your career, your life trajectory professionally, you know, or what you love to do passion-wise. With me, with salsa, it's like, you know, if I wasn't supposed to be spending all those hours per week doing that, that'd probably be kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's part of what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I think in a weird way, you can almost have more trust with the bigger things, because if you choose something that's not God's will for you, it could be pretty problematic.
Yeah. So let me ask you this too, because I think this has to go hand in hand with what we're talking about.
Sure.
A lot of people may not believe in God, or they may believe in a different religion, or they don't have a religion at all. But the bottom line, for us, we relinquish control to give it to something. At the Luminary Panel, our mission is to become an immediate resource to you as the aspiring entrepreneur. With that being said, we've partnered with SCG, Shamaa Consultant Group, the business development one-stop shop. They have everything you need as far as marketing, benchmarking, and so much more, so that we, as the Luminary Panel and SCG, can help you thrive in your business. That we know is true for us,
or we try to,
right?
We probably usually do a crappy job, but yeah, we
do our best, and that's all he asks for, mustard seed. So to the people that don't have that belief system or that faith, what would your advice be, or what are some of the things you would do if you were in their shoes to relinquish control?
That's a good question. I guess I would say, I mean, I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head, like you said, as things come to me. The first thing I would say, I mean, I guess I can only speak from my experience because I'm me and I'm not someone else. Yeah. But I think the harder the thing is that you're going through, the more you're going to need God. You know what I mean? Like, even if I didn't believe in God before, I sort of would have had to, because I would definitely be dead without it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it sort of depends on like how smooth and privileged your life is. You know, the more things are kind of good and you can kind of handle everything that comes your way, even if we believe in God, we can have a tendency to think when we're killing it, maybe we pray less, you know, maybe we're like not putting things in God's hands as much, because we're sort of like, hey, I'm the man, you know, and that can happen pretty quickly. Yeah. You know, one or two good things go our way and we're like, hey, like, I'm pretty amazing. Yeah. So I guess I would just say that the worse the thing is that person's going through, the more they're kind of not going to have a choice, because they're either going to die, depending on what the thing is, or their life is just going to be so ripped to pieces. You know, I think God is something bigger than you. And so when you face situations in life that are so much bigger than you that they kind of destroy you, I don't know. I feel like it's almost practical. Yeah. Even if you don't believe in God from like I'm a good person and I want to be a good person and I just want to love the children or whatever. Even if it's just like you just want to stay alive, you know, like we're human beings, stay alive, reproduce. Even if you just want to pass on your genetics to the next generation, if you're going through things in life that are hard enough, it is just pragmatically in your best interest to believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some people have never been in places where that was really necessary,
Mm-hmm.
and I can understand that, and maybe that's not their fault. But I guess that would sort of be my answer. It just depends on how bad things really get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. A lot of times when we get in those tough situations, we try to do it on our own and realize we can't do it by our own strength.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that, my advice to people that probably don't have a belief system in the faith, I would say is find good counsel. Find friends that you can actually trust with advice and that can hold you accountable to walk you through that journey so that you can see that there's hope on the other end. Not trying to fight it and be with your ego and all this stuff. I'm actually it's funny that we're talking about this. I'm actually just starting, literally I'm like 10 minutes into the audio book of The Untethered Soul.
I've read it.
And
It's been a while, so
yeah.
Don't quiz me on it, but I've read it.
You can't quiz me either.
Okay,
I'm only 10 minutes in.
Oh, yeah, you're 10 minutes through, so you can't quiz me because you're 10 minutes in. Okay.
So one of the things that I just wrote out, I never take notes on book. I'm more like a digester. He said, your thoughts will not change anything or anyone because they're just thoughts. I think people think that the way they think can alter the external world, but it only is a hindrance or an enhancement to your internal life.
Interesting.
Because think about it like this. You were thinking about how you visualize you having the cars, the girls.
I know.
Right?
It's almost embarrassing that I even said that, but I was 19. Give me a break.
Hey, listen, I gave you one.
I was just being honest.
Hey, listen, we all had that fantasy.
It means an exciting future.
Yeah, bro.
Let's put it that way.
We'll say you envision
A
having
compelling future.
Exactly. So you internally put that in your brain, but your body started to react towards the things for that life. If you think about things as negative, or you give a narrative, as the authors like to say, a narrative on the outside, it can affect you on the inside, but the outside does not truly affect you. It's just about how you see it.
Yeah.
The perspective on it. Does it make sense?
It does. I mean, I think it's definitely life is an internal game. This could be like a rant that I could go on, but
let's go.
You know,
rant.
This might sort of surprise people given the professional path I've selected, but I really don't like the word mindset.
Why?
I don't like the word mindset because I feel like everybody uses this word everything is just a mindset. And it's yeah, that's true. But I think when people say mindset, what they mean is the internal world. And the internal world is, are we allowed to curse on this or no? Or I don't have to.
Yeah, you good.
Okay. The internal world is so fucking complicated that it's to me, saying everything is a mindset thing is sort of like saying everything is all of the mountains and all of the oceans and all of the outer space and all of everything we've ever known thing. It's it doesn't make, it's so infinite and so complicated, we know almost nothing about it. And I think we know a lot less about the internal world than we do about the external world. Especially because the internal world can sort of create the external world, and we don't know how the heck that happens. We don't know where thoughts come from. We don't know what the subconscious is. We don't know where intuition comes from. We don't really even know how it is that we could think in the first place. There's so many things that people simplify. Oh, it's just a mindset. Yeah, you're right. Everything is about. I'm like, nah, man. This is a highly, highly complex thing we're talking about. This infinite internal place.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm very intrigued about you so far. And for the audience, this is my first time meeting him. We met through LinkedIn.
Yep.
I think we mentioned that earlier.
LinkedIn.
Right? LinkedIn. Woo, woo.
Get on. Shout out to, I don't know who owns LinkedIn right now, but shout out to LinkedIn. Yep, they're killing the game.
What I've realized so far is you despise how the gurus, quote unquote, the gurus, look at things at a surface level and people gravitate to it. I'm really intrigued about your approach to executive coaching. What's your ideology? What's your view? What's your perspective on executive coaching at a higher level?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me like really, really briefly go back because I don't
Go
know
ahead.
if I answered well enough a previous question, but you were saying for the person that doesn't have faith, what do you tell
Yeah.
them? I guess the more secular answer to that, which is still a good answer, it's just not enough of an answer for situations bad enough.
Yeah.
But the secular answer would be you have to, like we said, see something in your head that's compelling enough and move towards it. I also think that you have to be moving towards things. The bigger the thing is, you sort of have to feel like that's what you're on this earth to do.
Yeah.
You know, because whether it's the girl you think you're supposed to be with, or the guy, or whatever, or the career, or a certain passion, if you think it's what you're on this earth to do in sort of a spiritual sense, and I could go over to this too, because there's like our rational sense and our spiritual sense, and a lot of times those conflict. So like, what do you do when that happens?
For your clients,
So
bro.
maybe
Keep that for
we'll
your
go
clients,
into that
bro.
with the executive coaching part that I'm
Yeah.
answering, but that would be what I have to answer. If you feel like you're going towards what you're made for, maybe not that God made you for, but something made you for, then you will continue. So that's the secular answer. In terms of the executive coaching, I guess it'd be a good time to kind of segue into this is
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest mistakes people make, and I can go more into the details of what I'm doing with people and where I start with them and why I start there and what the process is. But just because this is in my head now and I don't want to forget because I think it's important, I think one of the reasons people think that they don't know what they want is because it's sort of this stuff is so hard to explain. So there's like our literal senses, right? And we think if there's something we can touch and feel and see and whatever, then it's real. But we have sometimes these intuitions of like, I just think I'm supposed to be on this path. And I don't know how to explain it, but it just seems right, or it feels right, or it even feels more real to me than this chair. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, how could that possibly be? Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like, I think we've got our literal senses and we've almost got these spiritual senses. And so the question is like, what do you do when those don't line up? Meaning you want something spiritually, or you think that's for you, or if you're not a God person, you want something that you intuitively sense, but it doesn't seem to line up with the rational world. And I think one of the big life hacks, maybe the biggest one, is I think the people who really make exciting things happen and are really outliers and do things way outside of the norm of what most people pull off in a good way is that they are willing to believe that those spiritual senses are real. You know, because it's like, well, how do you define real? If real is only this, then it's like, yeah, I guess it's not real, but you are still sensing it and seeing it. You're just like spiritually seeing it, you know? And so I think that people, like I said, that life can go really amazing for them, are willing to believe that that's real, and are also willing to believe that it's more real than what they see here. And they're willing to move towards it even with great opposition to what seems real in the exterior world until they get there. They're willing to see that as real. And so I think that's a big insight for me, executive coaching wise, that I'm seeing is like, yeah, I think that's a major mistake that people are making. If you're not willing to acknowledge these intuitions that you're getting, especially if they're really staying with you and they're really strong, I think it's a major mistake. So that's sort of a very, very broad answer. But I guess, I mean, I can tell you where I start with people. There's certain, there's a guy named Jim Rohn who was actually Tony Robbins' mentor. Yeah. And one thing I heard him say that his mentor Earl Shoaff said to him is that things in the Bible are just as true in practical wisdom as they are spiritual wisdom. And so my clients always hear me quoting these different quotes. And one of the things that I say is, you know, be faithful in the small things, right? So whenever things aren't going our way, we sort of back up and it's like, okay, cool. What are the things that we're already doing that we're obviously not doing well enough? Because if we did those things, we would be where we are. And so I'm starting with people's state, and I'm helping them to learn to manage their state, the way they show up in the world day to day and moment to moment. I have like a whole kind of system or checklist I do with that. Because if we can't manage our state, we're in trouble. So,
and when you say state, help us understand what that means. Because for me, I understand what state is for me. I'm saying, like, I believe state is a connection between your mind, your body, and your spirit in an alignment to where you want to go. Help me understand what your definition is as a professional.
Yeah, so by state, when I first heard this word from Tony Robbins, I never heard the word state. And I always heard, oh, take care of your health. But when I heard him talk about state, I was like, oh, this is a good word. Like, this makes a lot of sense to me. So by state, I mean the way that you're showing up in the world day to day and moment to moment. And so I first started learning this word when I was in sales, and I started fixing my own state, and my sales just like massively took off. So how you're managing, how you're showing up, business, personal, everything you're doing day to day, moment to moment. And so I can give you kind of the very quick rundown of what it is that I help people with this, because I think it would be valuable. If people are listening, they can sort of take it and run with it without needing the help from me or without potentially needing the help. There's certain basic things that I find all high-performing people are doing, and they massively impact their state. I call them like high ROI activities. So it's like our return on investment per time and energy of those things are so insanely high that to not do them makes zero sense. It'd be like, you'd be like, oh, Justin, I don't have time to give you $1 and me give you $10 back because I'm busy. It's like, that wouldn't make sense, you know? And so when I first meet people, I had them rate themselves, their state on a scale of 1 to 10. And then I go into these basics that I track. And so they rate themselves 1 to 10 with the following things, which are eating, sleeping, working out, clean home, clean car, grooming and self-presentation, and body language. If our state's not good, I almost guarantee you those things are not good. And so we rate them a scale of 1 to 10, and I give them very small homework. So let's say if their nutrition on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm not a nutrition coach, but let's say it's like a 2, and it's because they're drinking like 14 cans of Coke a day. It's like, okay, cool. Could we get to a 2.5 this week and drink 13 cans? You know, like things that they could definitely do. Because to answer your question as well, I'm a big believer in momentum. Life's a momentum game. When we don't have any, the most important thing we do is start to build something, because then we can build more. And I'm asking things of people that are so small that I know they will actually do it, because now we got momentum, and now that's good. And so we do those things, and then I came up with these rules for people. So, you know, I would ask my clients, like, hey, what was your state on a scale of 1 to 10?
Shout out to one of our sponsors, Co Space and Clubhouse. As you guys know, we did the Luminary Panel Season 1 on Zoom, and so we were looking for a podcast studio to film. And now here I am in Co Space and Clubhouse, and here they have multiple rooms, one being the lounge, a conference room, and a podcast studio. They serve many different beverages, including tea, coffee, and kava, and their main mission is to be a place where people can come together and work together. So if you can, stop by. It's right outside of downtown Orlando, and it's a great place to work and meet others. Hope you try it.
And I'm meeting with my people weekly, and they would say, oh, you know, I think I was like a 7. And I'm like, okay, cool. Why were you a 7? And they say, well, you know, I was feeling a little down or a little anxious or a little depressed, and they would say things like this, and for that reason, I'm not a 10. And I noticed that all of the things that people were saying had to do with feelings. So I was like, okay, I need to come up with some sort of rule for them, because these basics aren't enough. You could be really good in your basics and your state still not be quite there. They're highly coordinated, but they're not like one-to-one causal. Like it doesn't completely dictate that your state's good. And so I thought, okay, I got to come up with a rule for my people so that they can still show up. And so they were all talking about feelings. So I started telling them, okay, guys, we've got a new rule. And the rule is, your state is not contingent on how you feel. And people are highly trainable. Like, you can tell them that, and they can be like, oh, okay. And so they would go out in the world, and they would manage their state. And if their feelings were off, they could know, okay, we've got this rule, and we've got this system. My state's not contingent on how I feel, and they improved. And so it's like, okay, cool, that's good. And so maybe now at this point, they come back the next week. I'm like, how's your state? They're like, well, you know, it was like an 8. Like, okay, why is it not a 10? Like, what is that gap that we got to bridge? And they would say something like, well, you know, this thing happened with work, or this thing with my wife, or with my kids, or, you know, I was at the doctor's office, I was running late, and things didn't go how I wanted to, and I missed my appointment. And I noticed that all the things that people were saying to me at this point were circumstances. And so I was like, okay, everybody's talking about circumstances that are throwing off their state. So I need some sort of rule that I can give them, that if I gave them this rule, it would help improve their state again. And so I told them, okay, guys, your state is not contingent on circumstance. And they would be like, oh, okay. And so now we're Xing things out, right? So we've got us, and there's all our feelings, like X, 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 X. And then we've got us, and there's all of these circumstances in our life, and we're Xing out all these things. So now they know, okay, if these things happen, I'm not basing my state on that. I'm showing up regardless. And so things are almost complete, but not quite. So they come back, and their state is like a 9 at this point. And I'm generalizing across many people. And so I was like, okay, why are we not a 10? Excuse me, like, what is it that's going on here? And they would say something like, well, my thoughts are drifting to here or to over there, and I get kind of stuck in my head, and I don't know, I'm just not fully there and focused. And so I would tell them, okay, cool. I had like one final thing I had to create. And I say create kind of hesitantly because other people have thoughts like these too. It's just me putting it in my own way, maybe in my own kind of order, in my own way. But I, quotes, came up with this idea of mental repetitions. And so what I would tell my people is like, okay, you're going to notice your thoughts going this way and that, and I want you to notice it and bring yourself back. And when you first do that, it's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to take energy. It's going to feel kind of like moving through molasses or like through a thick forest or however you want to say that. And people, we don't like expanding energy because we got to save our energy to run away from the fucking saber-toothed tiger, So we don't like thinking because thinking actually takes a lot of calories. It takes a lot of energy for us to do that. So most people don't think because it's hard.
Yeah.
So anyway, I tell them, notice it and bring yourself back. And that many times throughout the day, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe more, you will have the opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
And as you notice it, bring yourself back. Notice it, bring yourself back. It's going to get easier and you're going to get stronger at it. And it's like a muscle and you're going to spend less time here and more time here. And so finally, at this point, my people are coming back and everybody was a 10. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got a system that works because they've got their basics and they've got these rules. And if we X out all the feelings and we X out all the circumstances and they had this little activity to bring themselves back, now they've learned to manage their state. And so that's always where I start with people because I feel like if you don't have energy, you can't do anything.
That's true.
And that's a problem. And so in the first 30 days, that's how I help people. And that's the exact template of what we're doing. And everybody learns to do it, because it's largely a decision to just get yourself there. And, I tell people the more money people are dealing with or the more results, the more moving pieces, the more this matters, at least monetarily and results-wise.
Yeah.
So, if you've got somebody who's making $1 million a year and their state is a 6 and they run a business, that's an expensive problem. How much is that costing them business-wise? I don't know, maybe at least like $200,000 or $300,000 a year, and how much is it costing in their personal life? I don't know, maybe at least another $100,000 to $200,000. So that's $400,000 or $500,000, and it's a lot of money per year.
It's expensive. Yeah.
It's expensive. It's an expensive problem. So that was also a little bit of a long answer, but I wanted to give people that detail because they can kind of go and be like, oh, okay, cool. I can run back this video and I can do this and I can fix that.
That's exactly what we built the platform for.
Yeah.
Bro. It's for people to find your story inspirational so that they can take action.
Yeah.
We find people where they are. Like, for example, there's somebody out there that had this probably not as gruesome or as hard as your journey was as far as your health.
Yeah.
But they probably have something similar where they can relate and use that as an anchor to find your story as inspirational to them.
Yeah.
And you're giving them value, you're giving them hope, you're giving them faith, you're giving them guidance and what to do and direction on what to do with all of this. That's what we built the platform for, bro. So definitely, if you ramble, you ramble. I'll let you know.
Sorry about the rambling.
No, we need that, bro. That's good stuff, actually.
And I think another one of my frustrating things with all the personal development people is like, it can be very vague and there's all this advice that's kind of all over the place. I think syntax matters, like an order of operations, So if someone was trying to tell you to build a house and they were like, well, you're going to need some electrical and some plumbing. You're going to need a roof. You're going to need some cabinets, some tile, a foundation somewhere, some grass and a driveway. You would sort of be like, that doesn't help at all. Like, what the heck am I supposed to do with that?
Like, I know I need this stuff.
Yeah. So I feel like it's helpful to have like an order of operations. Like, okay, guys, step number 1, our state's not good. We're going to fix it. How are we going to fix it? There's a specific stuff we're tracking. If we fix this, it will fix that. We'll move on to the next thing. So I think what I'm trying to do, or at least I'm trying to be this way, is very practical. Very like, okay, we're going to do this and then this, and it's got an order, and the order makes sense because there's so much advice out there that it's like, well, my mindset's got to be good, and I got to be positive, and I got to be grateful, and I got to know what I want, and la, la, la. It's like, it's helpful to kind of have some order.
Yeah. I agree. I think, especially for entrepreneurs, we feel like we got to do a lot to accomplish one big thing. Yeah. When realistically, we got to accomplish the small things that works towards the big thing. So, like, for example, when I started the Luminary Panel, I thought I had to have this platform ready, this platform ready, this platform ready, this
Gotta be
website,
perfect.
Gotta be
before
perfect.
I start.
But it's unrealistic because if I'm chasing perfection, I'm not going to get anything done. It creates the mindset, even though you don't like it. But
No, it's okay.
It creates.
I don't like
state.
it, dislike it all the time. I just don't like it when people say, "Oh, everything is a mindset thing." Because to me, I'm like, oh, like
it's a cringe.
But no, you could use the word. I'm not gonna be like, I'm leaving this podcast. I would not recommend. You'll see like 1-star review. Like, shit, is that from Justin? Continue. Mindset is okay. I'm with you.
Okay, cool. But it puts me in a mindset is like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not equipped enough, or I'm not ready for this. But once I switched the mentality around being perfect rather than just getting something done, the momentum we talked about started to spiral into good things to happen. And then I realized, okay, this is probably my purpose because I enjoy it and it doesn't feel like work, but also I make an impact in people's lives, right? What was that moment like for you? What moment in your life was like, all right, I think I'm on to something and I know I'm supposed to be doing it.
Oh, that's a good question.
And how did you react to it to make sure that, all right, no matter what the outcome was, because, again, going back to the story, the Luminary Panel is going to become lucrative at some point. And I knew that coming in. But I was willing to sacrifice the monetary gain in the beginning to build a community for people that needs the content more than me getting the money. No matter what stage of life I was in, right? I think people do it in the inverse. They look at their profession, they look at their life, and obviously, yes, you need needs, and yes, you have bills, and yes, this, yes, that.
Right.
But that puts you in a rat race. That makes you go into this hamster wheel where, like, oh, I'll get to it next time. Oh, I'll do it next year. Oh, I'll do it next month. Oh, I'll do it. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
So, what was that moment like for you? What was that, especially in the executive coaching world? Because I can tell that you're like, I love what I'm doing.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I guess to answer to hit on one thing that you said right before that I thought was really interesting, I'll just say briefly and then I can answer that. Sort of the idea of imposter syndrome, which is sort of when we're talking about perfection and we can't start till it's perfect, I think sort of the thought pattern is, well, it's not good enough now for me to put myself out there because I'm not there yet. So it's sort of an imposter syndrome thing. And I just wanted to like really briefly say, because I think this will be valuable for people. I don't know if I want to say I've conquered that, because of course I do feel it. And sometimes it hits me harder than other times, depending on maybe who I'm reaching out to or whatever. But that I think the only way that you can not experience imposter syndrome is to never go anywhere and never do anything and be like a fucking failure. You know what I mean? Because anytime you're trying to go outside of where you are going somewhere new and you're not there yet, or you're partially there, but you're not fully there. That's why it's somewhere new, you know? And the further outside of the lines you want to color and the further beyond where you are you want to go, the more you're going to feel that pull. But I think it's important to know that the only way you can never feel that is to never do anything ever. And people hate that feeling of never doing anything ever. That's like when we're the most miserable. We're very like striving creatures. We have to be striving to something. And so I think it's important for people to know when you feel that, one, everybody feels it. Two, it's impossible to not feel it unless you never do anything. And three, the more kind of lofty your ideals, the more you're going to experience. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's because good. I think everybody thinks about it, and of course we all experience it, you and I and everybody else. So I just want to briefly say that. In terms of the moment where things changed, I don't know if this perfectly answers the question, but I can tell you the moment that I decided to leave real estate, because that was a moment.
I think that's the moment, right?
Yeah, maybe that's the closest thing to answering that question of a moment. And that was, so I had just gotten back from Barcelona, Spain. And I'd always wanted to go there. I just always heard it was a really cool place. I spent 2 weeks there. I had an amazing time. I don't know if you saw this this post on LinkedIn, but I had rented a Lamborghini Huracan for 2 hours, and I got to like drive through the mountains.
That's dope.
And and I'm a huge car person. I love cars. So that was like a peak life experience for me.
Yeah, bro.
But I had a great time. I had lots of adventures while I was over there, and I just remember thinking like, man, I want to do something fun more than once a year. Like I don't want to be like only working and then have a vacation and then, And I remember being over there and like, being on the streets, everything is beautiful, and drinking like sangria and just thinking like, man, I want my life to look more like this. Like, I know there are people out there working from anywhere, that type of thing. And so that was kind of in my head. This was 4.5 years ago, so it wasn't as popular as now.
Yeah.
So I get home, and then one day, this is going to be valuable. So I'm glad you asked that question, or hopefully it'll be valuable. It's valuable for me.
I'm sure it will.
I went on the rooftop of my apartment complex, and I filmed this little Instagram video. And whenever I film a video, it's always very impromptu, freestyle, kind of like how we're doing now. We're just talking. I didn't know what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some idea, and the idea was sort of coming out as I was speaking. And the title of the video I called was Invisible Risk. And again, I want to say, like, it's not like I'm the first person to ever think thoughts like this. So I'm always trying to be very careful what I say, like I came up with this thing.
Yeah.
But it was just the way that the idea hit me and what I called it, and it made sense to me. But I did this video called Invisible Risk, and what I basically said was that, and I had never had this thought, that we all see the idea of putting ourselves out there and failing. What if we lose time, we lose energy, we lose money, we're embarrassed. So nobody needs an explanation on that, right? We know, like, yeah, we don't want to go for it because of all these reasons. But we don't see how problematic it is to stay on the trajectory we're on. So we've got the path that we're on, and we've got a path we could go on, right? The problem with the path that we're on that we don't maybe understand is that if we're on a path that we don't want to be on and we know it and we continue, not only is that a problem, but like we're guaranteed to fail. We don't even have a chance. If we go this direction, yes, we know all of the potential downsides, but we've got a chance at least. So I say invisible risk because it's like we're not properly assessing the upside and downside of both options, option A and option B. And so if people kind of looked at it more like, I'm guaranteed to fucking fail if I stay on this path. I've got no chance versus I have a chance. So all of a sudden, when you start looking at it that way, you're like, no chance, a chance. Like, I got to go for this. And so I filmed that video, and within a couple minutes, I was like, I got to quit my job because, if I stay on the path I be on, not that it was all bad, like I was making good money and I liked my coworkers and my customers and, I had the means to have a good life and that was cool. But I just felt like I could either have a chance or have no chance. And that really spoke to me. And so, there's been certain times in my life that are sort of like God moments where like I put my head on the ground and pray and kind of like, hey, God, is this a good idea? Like, is this going to work out? Like, should I really be doing this? Or am I just kind of being weird or crazy or whatever? And I sort of had this image of like myself in God's hands, like, or like these like kind of like wings like cupped around me in God's hands. And I felt like I was going to be okay. Like there wasn't going to be a harm that would come to me, which is cool because I had an experience like that when I resolved things with my little brother. We used to not speak for many years. Oh, wow. And I had like the same image that I had when I prayed about reconnecting with my brother was the same image that I had when I was making this decision to leave my job. So it was the same, which is really crazy. And which is funny because I had the same image with this girl, like, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong with that one. But the point is that
yeah?
But again, I could be wrong because that's an easier thing to get wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
But the point is with that story is like that was my moment of I have to at least give myself a shot. So I don't really view myself as like courageous or like a risk taker. I more view myself as like I had some insight to more properly assess the risk of both sides. And when I saw that, I realized that the prudent thing to do would be to choose something that at least gave me a chance. So that was sort of like the logic. That was the moment. That was where that moment came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so profound, bro, because I think a lot of people don't try, to your point, because they don't believe they have a chance. Mm-hmm. They don't know anybody that walked in those shoes as an entrepreneur or even like stepping away to change a career or make a career change. So a lot of people are just stuck with what they think they know. It's so profound.
It's scary. I mean,
it is very scary.
It's scary, and I was telling him before we started this, I definitely don't perceive myself to be like a business coach or anything like that, but I can tell you, being an entrepreneur to me, and I don't know if maybe you relate to this too, it feels sort of a lot like being a scientist.
Bro,
and you're like running experiments, because you're constantly like looking out into like everything you can possibly learn and find out about the current situation and whatever data you have, and then you're making a hypothesis of, I think if I try this, then this will work, hopefully. And then you try it, and maybe a little bit of it kind of works and a lot of it doesn't. Now you've got new data, and it's really a process. Like, and there are ideas that you'll have that seem like really good ideas. You're like, this is the idea, and it won't work. But then you're like, oh, now I understand why that didn't work.
Yeah.
So it's a process. It really is a process.
Yeah. I guess this would be probably one or two other questions before we wrap up.
Yeah, no worries.
This conversation smoothly ran through.
Yeah.
However, what I expected.
However much time we've got, I'm good. So I'm having fun. Hopefully the audience listening to us, all those millions out on all platforms, are hitting the like button, the subscribe button.
Thank you for being our spokesperson,
hints. Don't make us cut this off short now.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
We had a conversation before we shot and started recording.
Mm-hmm.
And you was like, I care more about people's fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about when you felt the most fulfilled.
That's a great question. How much time do we have? Because I want to edit my answers based on how we're doing. So maybe we've got like 10 minutes or something like that.
What time is it?
Gosh, it's 25,
Okay.
11:25. So
Perfect.
10 minutes would be an hour, I guess.
Dang, that flew by.
Yeah, it did. It flew by. I knew that was going to happen. The times where I feel the most fulfilled. That's such a great answer. Such a great question.
You answered it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how I can answer in a way that helps people the most. I think self-awareness is a big thing. And I think I'm big on clarity. And clarity sounds like so simple and corny. Oh, you got to know what you want. But like, nobody really tells you how to figure out what you want. And you could be really fucking smart and making a lot of money and have no clue what you want. And have zero awareness about yourself. These are like different skill sets. And I think awareness is almost a little bit of like a spiritual skill set in a way. It's a little bit mystical. It's like you kind of have to really pay attention to how you're responding in the world to the things around you.
Yeah.
And you really can't construct the ideal day or ideal week or ideal month or ideal year or ideal life if you don't know how to answer the question you just asked, which is really problematic because I think most people really don't. I'm really happy when I'm creating content. I think I'm a super creative person. And I really enjoy that. I'm definitely happiest, or one of my happiest, when I'm dancing salsa. I love dancing. I've always been a music person. You know, even when I was a little baby, my parents would tell me, even when I was in diapers, I would kind of like bounce up and down, and I would like be on the beat as like an infant. I used to play like get on the harpsichord as an infant that we had and kind of like play, and they were like, yeah, it actually sounded good.
Yeah.
I grew up playing piano. I grew up I did like some rapping and making beats and spoken word. I did breakdancing. I've done salsa. So you know, parties were always around music. Hanging out with friends was always around music. So I'm a very big music person. It's a huge part of who I am. I'm very happy when I'm driving, when I'm in the car. So to give people a sense of like how would you construct your ideal day, you sort of have to be aware of those things. So for me, there'd probably be like at least 30 minutes of driving, because that's a very high flow time for me. I'm happy. Life kind of makes sense. I'm watching the world go by. It would involve dancing. I love the beach. I know that's a little bit of a more stereotypical one because a lot of people might give that answer, but it might involve being at the beach. I don't have my own family at the moment, like wife or kids, but I love kids. I'm so joyful when I'm interacting with kids. So my ideal day would probably involve hanging out with my future kids and spouse. I could always change my mind, but I currently don't view my ideal business as having like hundreds of coaches under me or whatever. I kind of view myself as hanging out with my wife and kids and dancing and having a handful of clients at like $10K a month and making at least 7 figures and enjoying my life and making content and maybe having some virtual assistants to help me to post all of it. Like that's sort of the dream. So I would say to people, pay attention to when you're the most in flow, when you're the most joyful. Pay attention even to like times where you maybe tear up or get a little bit emotional. You're sort of watching. You kind of have to study yourself and kind of notice when things feel right. And maybe especially things that have been there for a long time, like me with the music or with the cars. Like I've driven Uber, I've worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, I've sold cars at Lexus. Like, a lot of my jobs have involved cars. I rented the Lamborghini Huracan. I used to own a C7 Corvette. So it's like, I like cars. I enjoy it. Like my little brother and I, when we were kids, we were in New York City and chased down this Ferrari, and then the guy showed us his Ferrari, So it's these little things I know about myself that I sort of put together over time. So I would say kind of pay attention to when you're in flow, when you're happy, when you're joyful, when life makes sense, when you tear up or get emotional, and kind of begin to put those pieces together. And whatever those pieces are for you, those might be things that that are part of your ideal day. And I think if you can start to have a sense of that, you can't really construct your ideal life if you can't construct an ideal day. Mm-hmm. And you can't construct an ideal day if you can't answer the question you just asked. And it's a hard question. Mm-hmm. So I guess those are a little bit of the things that come to mind. And those are some things for me that I would probably be incorporating that are high flow things for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I think that was exactly the answer I was expecting you to say.
Yeah.
Because again, that's a pretty prominent question for people that don't fully understand what their purpose is, one, and they haven't truly felt fulfilled in their life at all.
But you know what? To go back to what we were talking about of like our literal senses versus our spiritual senses, those people, and I'm not trying to talk bad about them, but those people are ignoring this. Mm-hmm. They're only going with this, so I could just say, oh, that's stupid. Why should I dance when I could just work and maybe make more money and whatever? It's like, well, it's because I see something in my head and I have to move towards that. Mm-hmm. There's certain things I see in my head. Like the most thing I think I'm on this earth is to have a wife and kids at some point. That's like why I'm created. Professionally, why I'm created is for this work that I'm doing, executive coaching wise or life coaching or however you want to say that. Salsa is another reason why I think I'm on this earth, to dance and to enjoy music. And so there's certain things that I just see in my head, but I'm listening to that. Mm-hmm. I'm listening to that, and I'm actually quantifying it or defining it as real, and I'm defining it as more real than this, and I'm moving towards it. Mm-hmm. And the people who don't know what their passions are the people that they get these inklings too, but they disregard them. Mm-hmm. And they keep disregarding them and keep disregarding them. And that's how you end up in a situation like that. So it's very hard, because these things are hard to explain, because anything that we can't see and touch in our modern society and culture, we're not super excited about calling that real. Mm-hmm. And we're definitely not excited about moving towards something like that is so uncertain. Yeah. But that's something that I'm doing of why I know those things about myself. And I think that's the mistake that people make when they don't.
That's good, bro.
Yeah.
We're just going to end it like that. Where can they find you on social media, man?
Yeah, I would say these days LinkedIn is good. My name is Justin Sandler, so kind of been living on LinkedIn these days. I feel I got to change my address and my demographics to LinkedIn instead of my house or my apartment, I mean. Yeah. YouTube also, it's a little bit complicated. It's Roman numerals for lowercase Roman numerals for 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Mm-hmm. And maybe this would be a good place to end, actually. So this is too tight for me to show you. The name of my business, I don't know if you ever noticed it or saw it, is Roman numerals. And this is a good place, since you asked a question about where to find me, and it's a cool story. And our timing will probably be good this way. Mm-hmm. It's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 in Roman numerals. And those are the counts of salsa. This is the name of my business. So in salsa, it's an 8 count, like most things in music and dance. A lot of things are 8 counts, or 4/4 time, they call it. And so in salsa, you're stepping, and the pauses are on the 4 and the 8. So in the classes, they're always like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. And whether you're doing partner work or shines, which is when you're apart from the girl and you're just dancing, because salsa is partly that as well, and they kind of put them all together. You're always hearing 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. And so to me, those counts kind of represent like going for what I want. Mm-hmm. When I went into real estate originally, and then this also, it was really with the intention of like, I wanted to become a badass dancer. Mm-hmm. I really, really wanted to be like dope, like very high elite level dancer. And so for me, it represents going for what you want, which is what my type of service is about. But one day somebody tried to pronounce it phonetically as a word. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. It's Roman numerals, not a word. Like, they're a little bit strange, right? And so they pronounced it and they're like, oh, what does that say? And they said like EVV. And I had never tried to pronounce this as a word. I speak Spanish. I don't know. Do you speak Spanish?
No.
Okay. So EVV in Spanish means and I lived. And so if you were to sound out the name of my brand or business in Spanish, it actually means and I lived.
Wow.
And when I realized that, I got like chills. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's perfect because that's exactly what I want it to mean. So that's kind of the story of that. So on YouTube, it's EVVTV, which is lowercase Roman numerals. So like the I's and the V's, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. And that's where that comes from. And I wanted it to be a brand. I didn't want to be like Justin Sandler Consulting. And I wanted it to be like something that looks cool on clothing.
Yeah.
And then finally, I wanted it to be like something that, there are bars and clubs that sometimes have a secret entrance and you don't know what it is unless somebody tells you. And so I want it to be like that, where people wouldn't really know what it is unless I told them. But once they know, it's kind of special. So for our millions of listeners out there, now they know. Don't tell nobody.
Yeah, sir. Don't tell nobody.
So that's the story of that. So
okay.
Yeah.
Bro, I am beyond grateful for this conversation. I've been truly transformed. I think we got a lot of synergy and alignment with how we view things and how we execute things. I wish you nothing but more than success, and I pray that you continue to dance, have fun. Hopefully that lady that you're dating is your wife, and she can give you the kid that you want.
We'll see. I could be wrong
could be
about
wrong
that
with
one,
the
but sometimes got to throw out that little thing in the universe on the podcast. So
yeah, I just had a whole situation recently that I'm like, yo, God, what are you doing to me, bro?
Yeah, man, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's happening? That could be a whole nother podcast, but
be.
Yeah, I don't. That category is tough.
It is,
because you don't really know. Maybe you're just tripping.
Yeah,
or
bro.
Maybe you're just wishful thinking.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard to know if something is a God thing or a wishful thinking thing.
Yeah.
It's not always clear.
Combo,
I don't claim to be an expert on that one.
But
so
that's a real
again,
thing.
little disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. That's one of those moments.
That's hilarious. But all right, that's a wrap on another incredible, fantastic, engaging, fantastic episode of the Luminary Panel. You know where to find me, Chauncey Jennings, on all social media platforms. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on all material, because we are in the game of inspiring the aspiring entrepreneur to take action and roll with the punches.
And guys, all the cool kids, they subscribe and they comment. So be one of the cool kids.
If you're cool, you'll be subscribed.
If you're cool, you will at least told 74 of your friends by now.
All right, that's a wrap.
That's where the outro music goes.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Luminary Panel. We hope our conversation with Justin Sandler left you feeling inspired and ready to elevate your own performance. If you're eager to optimize your personal and professional growth, be sure to check out Justin's coaching program. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Luminary Panel for more inspiring stories and insights from industry leaders. Thanks again for joining us, and as always, keep growing, keep shining, and we'll see you next time on The Luminary Panel.